Greetings, everyone. In case you missed it, the controversial figure Tommy Robinson was released a few days ago from prison. He was released early, supposedly on account of good behavior. His behavior had supposedly changed while he was in prison for the better, and so he was released. And I call him a controversial figure. I remember Peter Hitchens once saying during a television debate that saying someone's views are extreme is a non-argument, because it's like saying their views are currently unfashionable. A lot of people do not like your views right now, so therefore they are extreme. And the same goes for controversial views. Your views are controversial. That means your views are currently unfashionable. A lot of people do not like your views, and so they're considered controversial. Now, the main thing that made him controversial was his speaking out against Islam, basically. He spoke out a lot against Islam. He criticized the religion. He criticized a lot of the stuff written in the Quran. He criticized the gangs in the UK that were sexually abusing young girls. And this is something the police failed to look into properly. This is something the government buried, essentially showing their cowardice. So some of the things he raised were fair points. Interestingly, a lot of the things that he raised has also been raised by many others, and are even raised now. Somebody like Douglas Murray, for example, who has spoken out a lot against Islam and Islamic immigration, and yet he still is quite happily invited onto mainstream media. He's appeared on the BBC. He even appeared on the BBC not that long ago. You'll have priests who openly talk about the dangers of Islam, but yet it was Tommy Robinson who was seen as this really controversial figure. And I think one of the reasons for that is that he isn't as well spoken as somebody like Douglas Murray. And by the way, I do think Douglas Murray is really embarrassing himself recently on the Israel-Palestine issue. In fact, he had a long debate on Joe Rogan with a guy called Dave Smith, where he really came off looking very bad, very pompous. He looked like somebody who felt he was too good to be debating Dave Smith. He just had this very arrogant aura about him, like he knows best, and what is this person saying? But anyway, I digress. I don't want to get into that. The point I'm making is that Douglas Murray, perhaps because he is well-spoken and well-educated, can talk about these issues and not get into any serious trouble, not get censored. Now, Tommy Robinson is working class, so he isn't as well-spoken. The other problem with Tommy Robinson is that he's very violent. It's very easy to find loads of videos online where he is pummeling somebody, attacking somebody, and people who are on his side may say that he was provoked or he was attacked first. But there is also a video, for example, where he just walks up to somebody and clatters them. There's another CCTV video of him on top of somebody just punching away at him. So he does come off as very thuggish, and I don't think that helps him. He's also very popular. That probably doesn't help him, i.e. the things he says attract a lot of people. Now, a lot of the people that he attracts are not maybe people of the greatest category. Sometimes when he's walking somewhere and you see his entourage around him and his supporters around him, a lot of them do really look like thugs. It's not the greatest image. But as I said at the beginning, he has been released from prison on good behavior because he wasn't supposed to be released yet, so he's been released early. Now, you'll notice here as he's coming out of the prison. Well, first of all, you'll probably notice that he has a lot of hair on his head and a big beard. Now, I'm not quite sure why he came out looking like Tom Hanks in Castaway. It isn't as if it's the case that you cannot get your hair cut in prison or have a shave. I know that he has been put in isolation, but as far as I'm aware, the whole point of that is that you are away from other prisoners. You are on your own. I don't know whether that means you don't have access to a pair of clippers. So perhaps he came out looking like that to sort of give this image as if to say, look at what's happened to him, look what they've done to him. He hasn't been able to cut his hair or shave his beard. I don't know. It's just a question. It's weird that he came out like that. It's weird that he wouldn't have been able to have a haircut or have a shave in prison. Unless, of course, this is a service they were not permitting him to have access to. That could be the case. Who knows? The other thing you'll notice as you see him walking out and then subsequently giving an interview, his first interview straight out of prison. When I say interview, it's kind of more like a speech, really, is that he has a rosary around his neck, very clearly there. Now, of course, people may ask why that is. The first assumption would, of course, be that he's converted to Catholicism while he's been in prison, because he's never really talked about Christianity before. He's never talked about being a Christian. He's never really even talked about God, as far as I'm aware. He was never seen as very religious. I remember there was a video once of him having an argument with this Muslim, and the Muslim asked him if he's a Christian, because he then wanted to critique Christianity and show various verses that prove that Christianity is false or whatever. And Robinson said he thinks it's all BS. He basically said that religion in general is a load of nonsense. You can't really be a Christian if you're saying that religion in general is BS. So the fact that he comes out wearing a rosary is quite an interesting thing. Now, some people do wear religious jewelry, particularly Christian jewelry. You'll see a lot of people wearing necklaces with crosses on them around their neck, and that doesn't at all mean that they are Christian. They just like the way it looks. But usually when people wear stuff like that, it's not a wooden rosary. That's not really considered a piece of jewelry to be wearing a wooden rosary. So it's very unlikely that Robinson would be wearing this for fashion reasons. Now, what is possible is that it was given to him as a gift. He did mention in an interview he did not long after his release that he did receive a lot of letters from people while in prison.
I'm very grateful. If you took the time to write to me, know that I read your letter. I've got them all. I've got a garage full.
Now, nowhere in that interview did the interviewer ask him anything about the rosary that he was wearing when he came out. In that interview, he was wearing that rosary again, but this time it was kind of hidden underneath his shirt. I kind of skimmed through that interview to see if I could find any place where he's asked about that and maybe elaborates on why he came out wearing a rosary. But the guy interviewing him is a kind of right-wing Israel first guy. I don't think he particularly cares whether Tommy Robinson converted to Christianity, converted to Catholicism. So he didn't ask him that question. We didn't find out anything more. But of course, in saying that he received a lot of letters from people, some of those letters may have contained items that probably would have been checked by the prison service to make sure they're not anything illegal first. But he may have had a letter with a wooden rosary inside the envelope as well. And perhaps he decided to put it on as a way of sort of wearing a gift that somebody has given him. But of course, there is a possibility that he did actually convert to Catholicism. Now, it's not really that common for people in prison to convert to Catholicism. In fact, in the UK, people more often tend to convert to Islam in prison, because there does seem to be some very good organized recruiting going on in prisons, where quite a lot of even working class white Englishmen come out suddenly stating their allegiance to Islam. But it is possible that maybe when he was in prison, he did convert. Perhaps among some of the many letters he received, he did get some letters talking about Christianity, and maybe this convinced him. Maybe there were some people in prison who talked to him about Christianity or about Catholicism more specifically, and this convinced him. Who knows? As I said, he hasn't really talked about this other than wearing that rosary when he came out of prison and then wearing it again during that interview. He hasn't said anything about his supposed newfound Christian faith. He's kind of been talking in a very similar way to how he talked before, showing his disgust at the limitations of freedom of speech and how he's been treated, etc. He hasn't said anything about Christianity. He hasn't said anything about God. So we can only wonder whether he has converted or whether he hasn't. If anybody has seen him mention this rosary anywhere else, do let me know. I'd be very interested to see what he has to say. And of course, if he has converted to the Catholic faith, you'd expect his behavior to change a little bit. He may well still criticize Islam, and he may well still talk about things that are being covered up, but you'd think that his approach would be a little bit more peaceful, that maybe he wouldn't be as aggressive, that maybe he wouldn't be swearing at his opponents in public and having fights with them, because that certainly hasn't made him look good. I've personally never really followed Tommy Robinson a whole lot, because I've generally felt a bit uncomfortable with some of the people that he seems to have surrounding him. And as I said, while he may have made some reasonable points, I just felt there was too much baggage around him to really get behind him. And also his opposition to Islam wasn't based in Christianity. It was just based on some kind of secular view that he doesn't like Islam. And that also was something I couldn't really get behind. There was a time where Tommy Robinson was being invited onto many programs on television. He was even invited to the Oxford Union to give a speech. Let me know what you think, folks. Do you believe that Tommy Robinson may have actually converted to Catholicism? and that's why he came out of prison wearing a rosary? Or do you think that actually we shouldn't be reading too much into it? Leave your comments below, folk, and if you found the video interesting, do please share it. Thanks very much for watching. Have a blessed day.